start from the beginning, bro. So everything
Mm-hmm.
you need a way to save into memory, right? So the way you
Yeah.
do it is like variables, obviously. So you can say x
Mm.
equals to 92, you can say name equals to whatever, right? Some, and you can whatever variable you want. So even if you let's say to do's, so this is a list type, right? So what do you want to get? You can want to get apples, milk, or whatever, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
so these are so what we are creating here basically is we have to define this value, which is a string, right? It's a series of
Mm.
characters, and you are telling Python to store it somewhere and give it a label, give it a name, right? So you can fetch it later, and
Yeah.
you do this by uh, giving it a variable name. Now, variable name can you can pretty much do anything, like, right? As soon as you can have numbers in here, and
Mm.
special characters are not allowed except for underscore, right? So you can probably do
Mm.
this right as well. So this is like variables, and if you have to reference it later, right? So print x plus 100, or maybe so whatever you do on main, right? So this is
Mm.
we are using this whatever we are saying. Use this value that I provided to you beforehand, right? And I
Okay.
think you know this already. And so if you
Yeah,
can,
yeah, I know these things.
yeah,
Mm.
right. So this is the concept of variables, right? Just storing information in your memory, so you can
Yeah.
use it later. And the way like naming convention in Python works, right?
Mm.
So it's like you use something that's called a snake case. So if you have to like let's say name a variable with two
Two
words, right?
words.
So you
Mm.
will take like to do underscore list. So this is snake case. So that's
Mm.
generally what you use. And moving on, I think the next thing that you do is
And do we know use
yeah.
the space here, or
No,
is
no.
it
In
mandatory or
variable
not?
names, you can't use the space here. No,
No,
to
no,
give this
not there.
label, right? You can't use this space. Yeah.
No, no, not there.
Hmm.
Before the equal to operator.
Yeah, no, this is also not compulsory. This is also not required.
Mm.
Even the space here is also not required. You can pretty much like I think this will work also. It's just that it looks cleaner, right? So when you're writing code, you
Mm-hmm.
have to follow some certain conventions so that your code is
Convention. Yeah.
readable. Yeah, so your
Mm.
code is readable by others, right? So
Mm.
that's why I keep added space. So if you, I'll show you some big files, like maybe like if you see this file, right? So this has every place, like it will have
Mm-hmm.
spaces and all, right? And
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is so um, but this is like you can have formatters installed. So this file is actually formatted by a like a extension that I have installed,
Mm-hmm.
and that is basically that will take care of your formatting, so you don't have to worry about it. Other than this, so next comes the conditionals, right? So you have to say
Mm.
if if x is true, do this. Otherwise, if x is false, do
Yeah, yeah.
something else, right? Or this is other
Mm-hmm.
things. So generally, you do this if age equals to age greater than equals to 18, right? Print
Mm.
legal or something like that. And see, I am using single quote. So single quote. So there are three types of strings also. Let's
Three
talk about
types, no?
yeah
Yeah,
strings
single,
also.
double, and triple.
Yeah, before yeah, single, double,
Mm.
and triple, right? So
Mm.
x equals to 29, right? And this
Mm.
is a valid thing here in Python. So for example, right now, if you see this was a number, right? So this is
Mm.
it's an instance of int. Int
Mm.
is basically an integer, right? Integer class.
Mm-hmm.
And but here, if you see, we have taken an int and we have changed it. We have assigned an int like a string to it, right? So if
Yeah.
you see here, it will basically okay, the pop-up is not coming, but now we have changed the data type to a string, and
String.
this is legal to do. I think you should
Mm.
the code should also run. But let me define the age also. Okay, age equals to like 24. So if I run, so if you see here, So see, it executed through all of this. It didn't throw an error, which means you can get, so you can take an int and then you can convert it to an integer, like not a
Mm-hmm.
problem.
It's
But
called
in other,
typecasting, no?
yeah, yeah, no need. This is not typecasting. This is just typecasting is. I'll tell you what typecasting is. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you have this 92.399, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
if you cast this, right? Let's say you say y equals to x int of x. So what you are basically essentially
Mm-hmm.
doing is you are converting a float. This thing here is float, right? I think
Okay.
the this will also, yeah. So this is now it's saying it's float. But if you see y here, y, if you do type of y, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's actually print type why it has become an integer because you have this is called explicit typecast. So you're basically saying convert
Mm-hmm.
whatever is inside to whatever is
To
outside. So you're
integer.
saying convert the float to integer, right? These are like
Mm-hmm.
pretty basic things. So that's how an implicit typecast in Python, since it's a dynamic programming language. So what you are doing here,
Mm-hmm.
x equals to some string, right? This is not
Yeah.
actually typecasting. So this is typecasting, where you explicitly change the
Mm-hmm.
type of an integer, or variable, right? So so that's string, right? So single
Mm-hmm.
quotes and double quotes are pretty much the same in Python. So there are no distinctions.
Okay.
It's
Mm-hmm.
just that sometimes what you'll have to do, let's say if I'm writing, it's just a matter of convention, right? So either you pick say double quotes for your whole project, or you pick single quotes for your whole project, right? And depending on
Mm-hmm.
whatever you pick, there will be circumstance. So let's say I'm using double quotes throughout my project, and there is a place where I have to use like a apostrophe s.
Single quote.
Yeah, single
Mm-hmm.
quote. So then that way, like I can use that in, right. And if I have to use
Mm-hmm.
a slash uh, to add an escape, if I'm using the same character, right, inside a string. So that's how it works. So that's about strings and the this triple line, right? So triple line, these are called doc string. So these are like
Mm-hmm.
multi-line strings that you can generally use to document the code, right?
Okay.
This is a doc string. So that's the three type of strings. Other than this, what I wanted to do, yeah. So coming to list, right? So this square bracket here is a list, and if I
Mm-hmm.
do like some let's say z equals to curly bracket 1 2 and 3, and
Mm-hmm.
then let's say w and couple of 2 4 and 9, right? So these three things are three different types of lists. So this particular thing is a list. This is a set, the curly brackets, and this is a tuple. So difference between
Mm-hmm.
tuple and list, like are very, it's very same. It's basically the difference between a list and a tuple is tuples cannot be modified once defined. So this W
Okay.
is immutable, right? Immutable means
Mm-hmm.
something that can't be mutated,
Can't be
something that
changed.
can't be changed. Yeah, right. So and this is a set, right? And you will
Mm-hmm.
have functions whatever you want, right? You will have functions for all of these. So for example, x equals to int is a function in Python actually. So if you want to typecast from one type to another, you'll have these sort of functions. So this is a function, right? Float is a function also, right? Str is a function also. This
Mm-hmm.
list is a function also. This dictionary is also a function, dict, right? So every set is a function also, right? So instead of saying, let's say if I have to define a blank set, right? So if I'll do this, right? X equals to curly brackets without anything. So this is a blank set. I can also do x equals to set. And if I have to define a blank dictionary also,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can do this, right? So it depends on what you, and generally you'll do something like that, like in the like the topmost part of your program, right? Before you are doing any
Mm-hmm.
computation, you'll define a variable to store the values. um, so that is basically the data types. So set is also set allows you to do a lot of set. There's something called set mathematics, set algebra, like intersect.
Mm-hmm.
You can do things like intersection, union, right? And
Hmm.
you can subtract one set from another, right? So if you have, let's say, if you have two sets, so you have v with just 2 and 3, so you can do v minus z. So this is a logical operation, and it will print you something also, right? It print.
Okay.
So this is like if you read set theory, this will like all the functions that you can do here also, right? So
Hmm.
2 minus 3. So right now it's saying the set. I think you have to basically convert it to LS to print it. So this is all about like variables pretty much. I don't think we are missing anything. Yeah. So coming back to this thing, right? Uh, if else also pretty similar. Like we are seeing if age is greater than 18, it's legal to drive or something like that. And if you
Hmm.
want to have a else condition, you can add this condition, right? Age equals to, like, else. This is the else block, wherever whatever you write here, right? Print
Yeah.
illegal, whatever. Or
Hmm.
if, right, and then if you have want to add one more condition, right? If uh, so that will be elif
Hmm.
age equals to 8 greater than equals to 18 maybe, right? So you can say print something, right? Whatever, barely. So this is basically how I think this is also, right? Um,
Yeah, bro. I know these
yeah,
things.
yeah. So this is the basic, and then coming to, this is conditional. There are I think these are what they call the conditional side. So
Hmm.
a ladder of conditions, the program goes into a certain sub block depending on which condition is true. And
Hmm.
others, so now comes to, like, now we have to iterators, we have to come to, right? Iterators. One more thing in before we move to, let's say, right? So we are doing it this way, right? We are
Hmm.
doing it this way, right? So this is, let's say, if instead of printing here, I wanted to assign it to a string, right? So I want to set a status based on what the age is. So I can pretty much do like this, right? Status equals to legal or not legal, right? Depending on,
Hmm.
let's remove this altogether. Right? So this is one way to do it. The other way of doing it would be if I wanted to. So this is what they call an idiom, like, or this part of, like, a more idiomatic way of doing it. So if I can do this in one line. So if you see status
Hmm.
equals to um, legal, legal, right? Then I
Hmm.
say if age is greater than equals to 18,
Hmm.
else uh, illegal. So here I'm doing the
Yeah.
same thing as the if block above, right? But I'm doing
Hmm.
it one line, and I'm assigning the variable to, I'm assigning the variable directly. So
Yeah.
in some languages like C++, you'll have this operator. So you'll say status. Even in Java, you'll have this status, age, question mark, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
I
Something like
don't
this
think
you'll
it's
have.
there in Java. I think it's there
Yeah,
in
yeah,
C++.
it will be like age, something like that will be there, and then
Hmm.
whatever is will go here, right?
Hmm.
If age is greater than equals to 18, question mark. If it's true, then legal.
Hmm.
This particular thing is called the ternary operator. So if you see, right, this
Hmm.
question mark and colon, but that is not there in Python. So this is like,
Hmm.
I'll tell you a lot of ways of doing this, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Even now, right? So this is like a more idiomatic way of doing it. Like, so this is how you, if I just have to, because the purpose of this particular if statement is just to assign this variable, right? So we are not
Hmm.
doing anything else. So if that, in that case, you can simply do it like this. It's much more cleaner. It takes one line of code, right?
Hmm.
And it's much good. Similarly, let's say you have this. Let's come to loops first, right? So let's say there are two or three types. Yeah, mainly, yeah, I think mainly two types of loops that you'll most likely use. So
Hmm.
firstly is a for loop, right? So for x in for, yeah, for I in range. Range is a function which returns an iterable, right? Something that
Mm-hmm.
you can iterate over. So you basically pass the starting value where you want to start it from, and then you pass the end, like end value. And then if you have a step, right? So let's say you don't want it incrementing every one number, you want it and incrementing every three numbers, right? So you pass the
Mm-hmm.
step also, and then you do simple this print x, right? Or I, sorry. So this is your for loop. Now let's say instead of doing this, I wanted to assign it to some variable, right? Let's say this val is, I decided I want to populate this vals, so I probably do this vals dot append. So append is a function that is part of a list, so you can add an object at the end of the list, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I can do append I. And then if you print vals later, you'll get the list. So if I run this now, so 0369, right? You got this list. And the more idiomatic way of doing this same thing will be, so
Mm-hmm.
you can do vals equals to, you can use this, so you can introduce the square brackets, right?
Okay.
And this square bracket basically says it's going to be a list, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
instead of, like, you have I here, right? This I is here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is
Mm-hmm.
like your index variable or iterable, right? Whatever. Like this is the current value in your loop, right? In every
Mm-hmm.
step, in every iteration. So you do this I for I in. You say
Mm-hmm.
I for I in, and then you add the same thing back. So you 0 to 10 to 3, right? So
Okay.
this is now, if you do this, like, let me move the print statement here and let me comment it out, right? And if I run this thing again, it's the exact same thing. So here, like, like similarly how we did it
But
this
here
way,
we did
right?
not mention that it's
Yeah, you are saying so. See, I'll tell
string.
you what. So the square bracket is an important row, because square bracket
Mm-hmm.
basically tells Python that it's going to be a list, right? So here
Okay.
you have a variable name. Python doesn't know what it is right now. The equal
Mm-hmm.
sign, right? Equal sign comes to Python, right? It understands that this value, whatever this is, right? This is a label for
Mm-hmm.
something, and we are going
Yeah.
to assign it with something, right? After Python reads the equal sign, and once
Mm-hmm.
that happens, we have the square brackets. So the square bracket start and square bracket end, they basically tell it, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now we have, it's going to be a list. So val is
Mm-hmm.
probably a list, right? And then we
Mm-hmm.
are telling it how you populate this, right, list, right? So this is
Okay.
inside the square bracket, you're mentioning how to populate the list. And in this list, it's basically you're saying take this variable I, and this
Mm-hmm.
variable I is part of this statement here, this
Okay.
clause, right? So where you are
Mm-hmm.
saying for I in range, and the range function is same as before. We haven't
Mm-hmm.
changed range anything. I think if you can do, and even better, right? Because you're using range, right? You don't even have to do it this way. You can pretty much do it like this also. Vals equals to range 0 10 3, and you, instead of doing this, you just add a list function before.
Okay.
So lists, this is the, I think this is, uh, you can do it like this also. So if you, I run this now, it should, so see if you got the same thing also, because this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This thing basically returns an iterable, like
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called generator, but I'm not very sure. I have to look at that up. So it's the same thing returns, this function returns the same thing, and then you
Mm-hmm.
simply convert it to a list. So that's how you get
Okay.
the three value. So you see the like you see the changes that we're doing. You don't even have to write 3 lines of code here. You can do it in
Mm-hmm.
1 line. That's why, like, that's the advantage Python has over Java, or like more
Mm-hmm.
more traditional object oriented languages. Uh, so you can, so it's that easy, right? Similarly, and one more thing, like, which is very different from anything like C++ or Java or things like that, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you can also say, uh, right? So you have this. Let's bring this loop back here. So you comment this. Two things for now. So you have this two, you have this list here, right? You're, and what happens? So you get this list, right? In vals, you have this list,
Hmm.
but you can also do this. I'm not sure you know about this or not.
So that, so no, I don't know this.
Yeah. So if you see here, what
Hmm.
happened? Else is not a thing that you can only attach after if. Else is something
Okay.
this particular block you can also do after for also, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is very cool, and it comes in handy in certain situations, right? For example, so
Mm-hmm.
what is happening here is this acts as a if or else also, because if you see there's
Hmm.
a condition here also, there's a condition embedded here. Basically
Hmm.
what the condition says for I in range, right? So whenever until the I is in this range, right, from 0 to 10,
Hmm.
you are in this if statement, you are in this if block, right?
Yeah.
Similar to how we
Mm-hmm.
had this if,
Yeah, I got it.
and
Yeah.
once this is complete, you get this else, you come under this else block, so you can use else also with for also. So there is for else is possible, and once you are writing while loops, while else is also possible, right? So
Okay.
uh, so these two things, so what is happening is we got the our list, right? The list was assigned, we print finished, so that's how you see finished first, and then you're printing the variable values, right? So that's how you get the array here. So so this is also, so I can, you can pretty much do this with a while also. I'll show you with the same thing also while. um
So we can mix
yeah.
and match anything like while, if, and for.
Yeah. Else you can use. So the way, let's say in a like a practical sense, how would you use it? So let's say you are looping over a, let's say you have some big list, right? Some big chunk
Hmm.
of data that you are writing. You are taking 100 bits from that big chunk and you are writing it to a file, right? So maybe
Hmm.
you can write a for loop where in the for loop you're writing the chunk to file, right? Writing
Hmm.
each chunk to file, and once all the chunks are written into the file, maybe you are printing something to the screen, or maybe you're doing some API call or something like that. So that is one like one example of where you use this. Now to same change, like you can pretty much like do the same thing with a while loop also. So to
Hmm.
do it in a while loop, you first have changed it to while, right? So this is while I is, you'll say less than 10. So here you won't use the range, you won't be able to use the range
Hmm.
function. So here you have to say less than 10, I equals to 0, right? And I equal I, so here you can't do plus plus bro, because plus plus
Hmm.
that works. So you have to do plus equals 3.
Okay.
Then it's again the same thing. And if I run this now, it's the same thing also, right? 0369. The same thing converted to if. But it's just that you have to define the variable outside the loop, uh, right? And the end condition is the same, right? And, and so when do you use a for loop and when do you use a while loop? The answer, when you know for certainty that you will only have to run the for loop for n number of times, right? When you
Hmm.
know beforehand how, like until when you have to run the loop,
Okay.
then in that case you use, for loops. If you don't know until when you have to run the loop, you
Hmm.
basically use a while loop. So that's basically when to use which loop. I'll show you some
Okay.
example. I think there should be a loop, right? So for example, see. So here, what I'm trying to do in this particular function, right? So this
Hmm.
function, if you see, this is like a get history function. So what this
Hmm.
function does is it function takes a list of stocks, right? So you can point
Hmm.
it to ITC, or you can point this to Google, Apple, whatever. You pass it a list of stock codes that it will process. It will take the interval. So interval is basically the time duration, maybe 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever,
Hmm.
right? And it takes two dates. It takes start date and end date, right? So
Hmm.
and basically it makes an API call. So this is the API call that we're making, and it takes the historical data for that stock, for that interval. So you can tell it to go fetch all, like fetch the data for Google, the stock of Google, right? For
Hmm.
2022 or 2023. That's what that's what you do. And right, so if you see, I'm using here for, and I'm using inside the for, I'm using a while here, right? So
Hmm.
the reason I'm using for, because it's very easy. So this stock list is a list of stocks, right? So it's very
Hmm.
easy to trade over a list. So I'm just saying for stock in all the, like, right, in the list stock, right? um so this is why I'm using for, because I know, like, this is like very easy for me to figure out. um like I
Yeah.
so you, I think we defined the string, right? So basically, I don't have to manage any variables. I don't have to write some like index or something,
Hmm.
right, to iterate
Hmm.
over a list. So this happens automatically. So and here using while will be disadvantages, because then I'll have to like initialize an index variable, right? So if you do it in file, like let's
Hmm.
say if I, so I'll probably have to do something like this, right? Let's say I delete this line from here, and then I'll have to do something. I equals to 0, right? 0, then while I less than len of stock list. So basically I'm saying
Hmm.
until the last element of the list is reached, right? That's what you're saying with while. And then inside,
Hmm.
if I have to access a stock, right, as if I have to access an item within in
Hmm.
this list, then I'll have to do it like this, right? I'll have to do print stock list, and then I have to give the index, and then I have to pass my index, right? So that's also,
Yeah.
this is much more cumbersome in Python, because here I have to initialize this variable. I have to keep track of this variable also, right? And then I have to mention it everywhere. So this is more like more time consuming. But instead, if I'm using for, I replace all these three lines with just one line, right?
Hmm.
And this is the variable that I can get, this is the variable that I get, and I can use it pretty much everywhere in my for loop, right? Anywhere inside the body of my for loop. So it is much more preferable to use for loop here, right? But in case here, right, so here what you're saying, see, I'm defining two dates here. I'm saying start date, and I'm saying end date, and I
Hmm.
don't know how many iterations, because we have a dynamic interval as well. So user can pass 5 minutes, fetch me 5 minutes of data, fetch me 1 hour of data, fetch me daily stock data, right? User can fetch
Hmm.
any, can pass in anything here. So I
Yeah.
don't know how many iterations that I'll have to make, right? Uh, beforehand. So the best thing to do here is you use a while loop, because you don't know how many iteration, how many the number of times that you will have to run the loop. So that's why you use a while here,
Okay.
right? And I'm simply saying, I'm taking two dates here, like I'm taking the start date, and these are like the actual Python date objects. So the date time is a module that comes from Python only. So if you see, right?
Okay. Libraries.
Yeah. So this is like a built-in library. I'm saying take the start date and take the end date, and I'm saying
Hmm.
while start date is lesser than the end date. And if you see, I'm
Hmm.
modifying the start date also. So once and so this is the how the loop runs, right? And we make this API
Hmm.
call, and then API call might fail. We might get data. We might not get data. So and then this is a rate limited API. So rate limited API meaning after like we can only request data from the API few number of times before it blocks us. So this is what will also
Hmm.
happen when we run our Python crawlers, by the way, right? So
Okay.
what we do, so once we get a once we hit a rate limit, right? So API is saying, oh, we have given you enough data, you are requesting data in a very short span of time, all right? So you won't
Hmm.
get data until 90 seconds. So that's why, so then we are waiting for 90 seconds here, right? And then we are just like, I'm adding like I'm assigning a new value to start date, right? So
Okay.
that's what I'm doing here. So if you see, that's it, like it
Hmm.
is a little more complex. Like there's some competition going on, but that's essentially what you're doing. So use while loops when you don't know how many iterations you require, and if you know
Hmm.
for sure how many iterations you need, then go for for loops. That's basically how to think about it. Basics, right? So any object oriented language like C++ or Java or C Sharp, so they will have a bunch of concepts, right? So the first concept is like abstraction,
Mm,
inheritance, right? And I think polymorphism is another one. So
mm,
abstraction is in pretty much every language. Abstraction is like nothing new to Python, but
mm,
this right, and then there's like a concept of hiding the data, right? So you will define a class and in C++ and Java, and there will be qualifiers, and those qualifiers will
mm.
basically say private, public, protected, or something like
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
will be their name.
Yeah, that
So
I know.
basically, that they use it to hide the data, but
Mm,
in Python, like you don't have a concept of hiding any kind of data. So whatever is
mm.
inside the class, right, you can pretty much
Access it.
yeah, access it. And there will be like, so there's a
Then
convention. There's
how
a convention.
if I want
Yeah,
to hide the data, like Java
yeah.
will
You
just
can't
protect it?
actually hide the data. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So for example, this
Mm,
vals, right? This val
mm,
uh, is an instance of class list. So
mm,
there should be things, so you can pretty much access literally everything from this vals object. And the way you do it, right? So let's say if I want to find the list of this vals, how would I do it? I'll do this, right? I'll do this len function. So if I want to
mm,
find the length of anything, you have this like global len function, and whatever object you pass, right?
mm.
It will get the length of that thing, right? So let me print it also. um, we know the answer is going to be 4, but
Yeah.
so and what is happening underneath is this. So whenever is class, right, this class is subclass of another class. So for example, this list class is subclass of another class, right? There is a
Mm,
So that will have a bunch of functions, and basically somewhere in the definition of this list class, they're implementing this len function, and they're not actually implementing this particular function. This function basically calls another function. I'll tell you which function it calls. So if I do
mm.
vals dot underscore len underscore this, so this len function calls this len function under the,
Okay.
and that's how you
Mm,
get the list, right? So let's say you make a complex object, right? Let's say you have something
mm,
like a snake object, or let's say you have a car object, let's say, or you have a data stream object. How do you define length in that case, right? It's a list, so defining the length is easy, right? The length of a list is basically a number of all the elements in the list, right? But if you have a complex object, how do you define the length? So basically,
mm,
you override this function, and override is, again, I'm not sure you're familiar with overriding or not, but you are basically overriding this function. I'll come to overriding and all also. So basically, let me
mm.
comment this out, and we're printing the length also, right? So see, same thing happened. We got the 4. So this proves my point that len function is calling the len function inside here.
Mhm.
Right. So this is what these you see, right? Two underscores in front and two underscores in back. There will be a lot of
Mm,
methods like this in every class, and these methods are called double underscore methods or dunder methods. So
mhm.
this is like, and these provide a lot of information about. So literally, name will also be there. So name is a function
Okay.
will be there. If you go and Google it, right? So if you go Python dunder methods, so you will see a huge list of all the methods, like
Mhm.
magic methods and then, so if you see, right? So abs add, like if you do object like to if you add two complex objects, right? So
Mm,
if you see, like let's say two variables, x equals to 39, y equals to 49, right? So x plus y it's possible to do x plus y, and let's say to list also. So
okay.
these are my two lists, and b equals to some other list, right? So a plus b is also possible, and x plus y is also possible, right? So how,
Mm-hmm.
like, but how, like, but if you do this, right? So a plus b
Mm-hmm.
will be, the answer to of a plus b will be like this list plus this list appended with this list, right? So
Yeah.
it will be 29
29, 932,
932
and
98 whatever, right?
9297.
779. So this will be, so how does Python know? And this is like, this is an example of polymorphism. So you see this plus method, right? This plus operator is
Mm-hmm.
doing different things in different contexts. Is It's doing different things in different situations. That is what is, it's called polymorphism. Polymorphism basically means different forms of the same entity, right? Same thing,
Okay.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's what polymorph means. Right. So here we are adding the literal two numbers, and here we are like joining the lists, right? And Python knows how to do it automatically. It knows how to do it because there are, so there is like this add method, right? So there,
Mm-hmm.
these two variables are the objects of int, right? Int class.
Yeah.
So there will
Mm-hmm.
be instance. So these are two are instance of the int class. These two are the instant of list class, right? So
Mm-hmm.
whenever you define a class, whenever you build a class, you basically define, like you have the ability to define all these double underscore methods. So they have,
Mm-hmm.
so list class has a different underscore method, like different add method defined, and the int
Mm-hmm.
class has a different add method defined. So if you see,
Okay.
these are all the double underscore method. I think this is right. So how to convert it to an int is another double underscore method. How to add it to add.
Mm-hmm.
What to do if someone like asks for documentation of this, right? Float.
Mm-hmm.
How to, if someone calls the floor method, floor and seal, and all these methods will be there.
Okay.
How to convert it to a string, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is, and all these are like double underscore methods. So and these, so languages such as Java use the operator to create an instance. In Python, then, so there's this dedicated method to implicitly called init before. So
Mm-hmm.
objects and all, I'll come, bro. Let's talk about
Objects
objects and
and
all.
classes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the basics of objects, right? Let's say you have to manufacture 100 cars. What you do before manufacturing 100 cars? You basically, so you'll have all these AutoCAD like diagrams and all, like of how the car
Mm-hmm.
parts are going to look, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how like the blueprints of the cars, and how like what size of, like how, what are the dimensions of the body, or like everything. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
define that first on paper, right? And then you'll see whether it works or not. So that's what. So you will define a blueprint first, and then you will make the copies of the blueprint. So similar concept is with like classes and objects. So if you go and
Mm-hmm.
class, right? So let's say class A. This is a class, and in it nothing, like you can literally do this. Also, you don't have to define or anything also. Right. So whatever you class is a blueprint onto which, like when you do something like this, right? So you can say where, like, some variable name, and you do this. So now here you are defining a class. So here you're saying, okay, this is a class, and these have this class has these methods. This class has these data members and all that, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
saying all of
Mm-hmm.
this. So you're defining the blueprint of how the thing is going to look. And this is like
Okay.
you're creating an instance of A. That's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
An instance is
Mm-hmm.
like, so like I'll tell you how it will work. Let's say, right? So there, firstly you'll have to define a method. I think we let's do you know how to work, how the functions work, bro?
Yeah.
Functions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So simple function is, you just use the def keyword,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Function
you
name.
name the function, right? So function name, and then you pass parameters, right? And once you pass parameters, you do some computation here, right? Whatever you do, like whatever
Mm-hmm.
keyword block you have, and then you return, right? So like x plus 12, 10 plus 12, and then whatever you do, you return whatever, right? You return
Mm-hmm.
maybe 9 plus 8. Whatever, you can do literally
For
anything.
random. Thanks, that.
Sorry, what?
If we call, we can
Yeah,
print out
yeah,
something.
and then you'll call this function also, and you will
Mm,
call function name, and then you'll pass the parameters. So right, a function is also kind of like a sub program, right?
mm,
You can do any sort of math like computation inside a function, and you can call it again and again and again to do it multiple times.
mm,
So to
yeah.
give you an example, like without writing a function from scratch, I'll show you a function in somewhere, right? So this is a function also, right? So
Mm,
here we are saying give me the list of stocks to fetch, give me the interval, all right? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, give me the start date and give me the end date. So these are the parameters this function takes, and
mm,
it does some computation, and then what it does is there's a store object in the class, like, and it stores whatever data it gets from the API,
okay.
right? And then there's another function which if you choose, you can dump all of that data, right? Whatever you gathered from the API, you can dump all of that data to a Python file, right? Or like a
Okay.
CSV file, no, no, not Python,
Mm,
right? So let look at this class first. So this is a like a data collector class, and this is like just something I made. Like this is a utility class, right? So anything related
mm,
to collecting the data, right? Collecting the stock data, maybe like a beat tick by tick, like real time data or beat historical data, whatever type of stock data I need to get. I'll do it with this data collector class. So the way
mm,
to define a class is you use the keyword class, and then you write the name of the keyword class. You write the name of the
mm,
class, right? And the first thing you do is you define your init method. So in this init method, you will basically define uh,
which class to
all the
first?
variables you need. So yeah, this is kind of like a constructor also, bro. So this is a
Mm,
constructor. Here we'll say, okay, I need these variables, I need these parameters to work with, and I need to define these variables for the things that I'm doing, right? So for example, I'm defining a store object, like a store dictionary here, right? And then this is the breeze. So this is breeze is like an is name of the API provider, like which is providing the API.
okay.
So and
Mm,
this breeze also comes from some other class. So we're defining
okay.
another class. We are getting this breeze, and then we are passing this breeze object inside the data collector class, right?
Okay.
And tomorrow, because this breeze is part of like a IC, like it's from a particular broker. This is from ICICI, right? And tomorrow, if I want to decide, tomorrow I want, I want this class, but I want it to work with this Zero also, right? Or some other broker
Mm,
also. So that's
okay.
how like this is modular. So I can plug and play here. So instead of passing breeze, I'll pass that different object, right? And it will get data from zero instead of from ICICI. So that's how it works. Um, and so this is your init method. This is your constructor. So constructor basically is a C++ term. And
Mm,
constructor basically means once your object, or like once you're like initializing your object, you need to construct it, right? So while you have the blueprint, but you're constructing it, and you're constructing it. Basically, what that means in software terms is like you are allocating memory for different variables. You are checking if
yeah.
you have, or like let's say your class needs. So like I can also do this pre-check here, right? What if this breeze thing was not passed to me? Then what do I do? So I
Mm,
can raise a here also itself saying this breeze was not passed, or this object was passed, but this object doesn't have this particular method. So I can do
okay.
all the prerequisites. I can do all the checks in my init method also, right? So that is, and then I can do all the rest of the computations that I'm doing. So that's what you do, right? You define what to do when the class is being constructed. That's what you define in your constructor, right? In so and then you have this method, and everything is public literally. So I have access to this method, I have access to this method, right? um, and then and then if you see there is this particular self order, so this I'm not sure you know or not. Self this is like this will come in. So if you know, in JavaScript, this is called the this. So in JavaScript, there will be a this
Mm,
thing, there will be
yeah,
a
yeah.
this keyword. So this is the same,
Hmm.
self is the same thing. I'm not sure you know or not, but I'll come to this a little later, right? So then you can
Hmm.
define all your functions and everything literally here in your class. And once once someone creates an object, right, and this data collector is come in handy. So you see we are getting this breeze from this ICICI connector, right? And then we are passing this breeze here in the data collector object. So this is the use of this, how we are creating an instance. So this is my collect data file, right? From utils import collect data, and then once you import this file, I'm creating an object of this particular class, and here I'm passing the parameters that it requires, right? And then again I'm getting an object of that class. I'm getting an instance of that class, and then I'm calling the get stock history method,
Hmm.
right? So that's how it works. And let's say let's say I have this method here, but I want it to be private, right? So in JavaScript, not in JavaScript, but in Java, you can do something like you can write private, and then if you write private, this method will not be accessible outside the object, right? You can't do the same thing here because there's no concept of hiding anything. So,
Okay.
but generally, in case if you want to convey, right? So I want to convey to whoever who is using this data collector class to not use this dump to CSV method. How will I do it? The way to do it is basically you add a so like I said, there's no mechanism, right, to hide this function. So I can't really hide it, but I can tell people not to use it, and I do it by adding the underscore. So if you see underscore in front of a method, or I
Hmm.
can even do double the underscore in front of the method. So that it means that this method was supposed to be private. You shouldn't really be calling this method from your object. So
Okay.
it's a convention that people follow. But even then,
Hmm.
I can use it if I really wanted to. I can still add the double like two underscores here, and I can
Hmm.
call this like dumb CSV function,
So
right?
it's just like an adjustment, like
Yeah,
regarding
yeah,
to
it's just an
convention.
adjustment.
Hmm.
There are no hard rules. It's just like a
Hmm.
convention that you follow, right? Like it's like a unspoken rule that you follow. That if
Hmm.
something has a underscore, you don't have to
Call that.
use it, call it, yeah, right? So
Hmm.
that's what we do. Now let's come to self, right? So like let's come again to this file. So you have your class A here, right? And this class A has like whatever you've written, right? um, and then what you can do is you the thing with class is I can like I can create any like I can create n number of instances of this class,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
um so let's say and to do let's define the init method also. Def underscore init self, right? Self dot x equals to 0. This is our init method. So this is our class, and I can literally run a for loop method. I can probably do this. All is equals to like all a equal to for x in x, sorry, x for x in, right.
What is that
Maybe,
all?
sorry, what?
What is this?
Yeah, I am saying I am what I'm trying to tell you is this is my class, right? And
Hmm.
I can create any number of instances of this class. So I can
Okay.
maybe I can have like I equals to a, right? So this is one instance, and then I have j
Hmm.
equals to a. This is second instance, right? I have a equals to k equals to x. This is second instance, right? This is the third instance. So
Hmm.
I have taken this class. I have created three objects of this class, right? I, J,
Okay.
and K. Now, if I go right, I can print I dot X.
Oh,
I
okay.
can also
Now.
print J dot
Hmm.
X, and
Hmm.
I can
K
also
dot
print
X.
K dot X, right? So,
Hmm.
but how does Python know if I do right? And then all the variables are named here are X, right? So
Hmm.
how does it differentiate? How does Python differentiate which instance of the object I'm calling? if there can be n number of if there can be n instances, right? If there can be n
Mm-hmm.
copies of a class, and you're
Mm-hmm.
calling one method, or you're trying to access a member variable of one class, one particular object,
Hmm.
how does it know that which instance is being used, right? So in
Because
memory, every
everything
time,
has access to it, no? So
sorry, what?
all the objects has on access to the class members.
Yeah. So no, what will happen? I'll tell you. Wait. So
Hmm.
basically, the Python will read this line, right? And
Hmm.
what will it will do? It will create a separate variable, or like it will allocate some memory, right? I
Hmm.
think ideally 4 bits or 8 bits or something like that. Eight bytes,
Hmm.
not bits. It will allocate some memory for this variable, and then
Yeah.
it will read this line, and then it will again create a variable for this, and then it will
Hmm.
come and it will read this line, and then again, right? So in a memory, right, in memory there are three separate instances of defined for this class, right? So if
Okay.
I'll prove you that also. So let's say if I do I dot x equals to 10, but I do j dot x equals to 12, right?
Hmm.
And if I go and print I dot x, j dot x, there will be different values. So it's not like I, j, and k are pointing to different places in the memory. That's what I'm trying to
Okay,
say.
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, right now. So vals dot name, where is vals dot name? Okay, now it's trying. Okay, right. So 10, 12, it's pointing to different location,
Hmm.
right? So but you see, like in an object, right? So this x is like variable name is the same, right? So how
Yeah.
does it define it? And it doesn't rename you.
So
I'll
you're
prove you.
saying that it will create three instances separately and three
Right.
memory blocks, so
Yeah.
that each instance is able to access its
Yeah.
own memory block.
Yeah. So yeah. Now
So
the
if I
question is,
create
right.
100 instances, it will create 100 memory blocks for
Right.
each variable, and
Right. Yeah. It will not. It will allocate 100 memory blocks.
but
So
it will
not
not use
create.
it unless it is
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
initialized.
It will allocate it. Yeah. So
Hmm.
but if you see, right, how does it differentiate between these three instances, I, J, and K? How does
Hmm.
it differentiate that I's x equals to 12 and J's x equals to 12?
Hmm.
See, this is why, like here, the way it happens is, you have this thing, right? You have these curly brackets, but we are not passing
Yeah.
here anything. But what
Hmm.
is happening is when the language is running, or like when the
Hmm.
interpreter is running, it is basically passing one thing. So it will pass. It's basically this thing I equals to a I is this, and these two statements are same.
Okay.
So even though you are
Hmm.
not mentioning it explicitly,
Hmm. Hmm.
this is being passed inside this curly brackets implicitly, like by the
Okay.
language itself. And this is
Hmm.
being done so that it can differentiate, right? So like we discussed that there are okay three separate blocks being mapped correctly, right,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
three different objects that we have defined, that we have created. So it is
Hmm.
doing that using this self keyword here.
Okay.
So everywhere, like, so you were saying, so inside the object you see, right? So you were saying self dot breeze, like we are saying here self dot x, right? And so how does this breeze know that it belongs to one instance of data collector and not the second instance of the data collector, right? It knows it because of self. So here we are
Okay.
saying, we are implicitly passing. This is a way of differentiating different objects, and
Hmm.
mapping different objects to different memory blocks. So there is a parameter that is passed being this like this whole block of code. So in JavaScript, when you use the keyword this, right? So
This.
this is a way of saying this. So when you say this
Hmm.
dot breeze, you are saying
Hmm.
take the variable from this instance of class of the class, right? Take the
Okay.
breeze variable from this instance of data collector. Similarly,
Hmm.
self is another way of putting it, saying self is saying this object, the object that is
Hmm.
currently in like that is currently being called from, right? So that's why you have to, like, if you literally see the first parameter of every object, right, is self.
Hmm.
Is self. Here also I have defined self, and this is like a mandatory thing that you have to define. So if you
Okay.
don't add self here, right, it will not
Hmm.
recognize it as an object property. It will not recognize it as a data member. So that's what the
Hmm.
self is for. It's little like, I'm not sure like you understood or not, but that's the way to. It's trying to map a uh, different memory blocks to
Yeah,
different
yeah,
labels.
I got it now.
Yeah, yeah. So